Hi, and welcome to Dave's Think Tank. You know, a lot of people say that there's no more mystery in the world, that science has solved everything, proven it all to 12 decimal places. It is not true. There are plenty of mysteries in this world. On today's show, I'm going to show you two mysteries I've found in my own house. One of them I've solved, but the other is as perplexing as the day it happened. Come along with me and I'll show you. Now these double doors lead to my kitchen. I replaced the original doors with these back around 2002, and before I go any further, let me tell you about that. When I bought the doors, the guy asked me if I wanted them pre-milled. I admit I didn't know what that meant, so I asked him what did he mean by milled. He told me it meant they would come with holes cut for the doorknobs and the latches and the hinges. Now I definitely didn't want any of that because the hinge cuts would need to match the existing hinges. I didn't have a latch and I had chosen special doorknobs that required a small hole. I wanted them before they milled them, so I told the guy I definitely wanted them pre-milled. So when I went to pick up the doors a few days later, they were completely milled. Latches, doorknobs, hinges, they were all cut out. I noticed right away and complained, hey, I told you I needed these doors pre-milled. He looked at me like I was crazy. He pointed to the cuts and said, they are pre-milled. I said, they're not pre-milled, they're milled. I needed them before you milled them. So he tells me pre-milled means that they are milled, as if that makes any sense whatsoever. So you can see here I've filled in where the latches were supposed to be, and these doorknobs are set so they just barely avoid falling into the holes they cut, but they've lasted 15 years without a problem, so I guess that's okay. And I managed to move the hinges to match the store's cutouts. But if you've ever installed new doors, just remember that milled and pre-milled are the same thing. And don't trust anything they say about flammable or inflammable. I'll tell you that story another time. But back to my mystery. One of the important parts of a door is this horizontal door stop, which the door hits when it stops. I installed these doors in 2002 and they worked quite well for about 5 years, but then one day, instead of hitting the stop, it slid underneath it. So I figured maybe I'd installed the doors 1/8 of an inch too low and repeatedly hitting the stop right on the edge had worn it somehow. I could have pulled the whole thing out and tried again, but instead I pulled this stop down a bit more and shoved some toothpicks into the crack, and problem solved. But then the same thing happened again after another 5 years. It worked the first time, so I pried the stop down a bit further, shoved in more toothpicks, and forgot about it. Until a few weeks ago, another 5 years gone by, and it happened again. The gap in the stop was getting pretty big, and more toothpicks were just rattling around in there. So I looked to see if something else was going on. That's when I noticed these hinges have enormous gaps in them. I sure didn't remember them being like that when I bought and installed them. And then it hit me. These hinges have been in use for 15 years, slowly grinding away, losing just enough material to sink a small fraction of an inch every 5 years. Now, many others might have replaced the hinges at that point, but instead I found a washer in the basement and I stuck it in right here, raising the doors for hopefully another 15 years or so. So a 15-year mystery is solved. Now I told you I have another unsolved mystery, and this is one you may be able to help me with. A while back I was dumping some water out of my kettle when I heard a rattle inside. Almost immediately, this piece fell out of the kettle and into my sink. So obviously this piece became detached and I would have to figure out where it came from and put it back or else get a new kettle, and I wasn't going to do that. Except, now take a look inside here. There is nowhere in here that this piece belongs. It's not off the bottom or the sides. Now these two holes are a perfect match for the two metal ends of this coil on the bottom. Except if the coil went through the holes, then there's no way that this could ever fall out. Maybe it's part of some internal mechanism in the handle here or something, but then how did it get out of there and into the kettle? And why has it worked perfectly for a couple of years now since the piece fell out? I've got to admit, this one has me stumped. Is it some fourth dimensional being having a laugh? I honestly don't know. If you can figure this one out, then please let me know in the comments below.